Hi guys, welcome back to Roald Dahl for Witches. I'm going to read the next two chapters today, so sit tight and enjoy. This is all Roald Dahl's own work. I'm just reading for entertainment and pleasure purposes. So the next chapter is called The Ancient Ones, so let's get going. Have a quick drink first. Okay, sorry, The Ancient Ones. My throat was a bit dry, sorry about that. The Ancient Ones. The Grand High Witch stood on the very centre of the platform, and those dangerous eyes of hers travelled slowly around the audience of witches who were sitting so meekly before her. All those over 70s, put your hands up, she barked. Suddenly, 7 or 8 hands went up. It comes to me, said the Grand High Witch, that you ancient ones will not be able to climb high trees in search of gruntles' eggs. We won't, your high grandness. We are afraid we won't, chanted the Ancient Ones. Nor will you be able to catch the crab cruncher who lives up high on the rocky cliffs, the Grand High Witch went on. I can't exactly see you sprinting after the speedy cat springer either, or diving into deep waters to spare the blubber snitch, or striding the bleak moors with a gun under your arm to shoot the grub squirt. You are too old and feeble for those things. We are, chanted the Ancient Ones. We are. You ancient ones have served me well over many years, said the Grand High Witch, and I do not wish to deny you the pleasure of bumping off a few shouting children, each just because you have become old and feeble. I have therefore prepared personally with my own hands a limited quantity of delayed action mouse makeup, which will distribute to the ancient ones before you leave the hotel. Oh, thank you, cried the old witches. You are far too good to us, your grandness. You are kind and so thoughtful. Here is a sample of what I am giving you, shouted the Grand High Witch. She fished around in a pocket of her dress and brought out a very small bottle. She held it up and shouted, In this tiny bottle is 500 doses of mouse maker. It is enough to turn 500 children into mice. I could see that the bottle was made of dark blue glass, and that it was very small, about the same size as the ones you can buy at the chemist with nose drops in them. Each of you ancient ones will go to these bottles, she shouted. Thank you, old generous and thoughtful one, chorused the ancient witches. Not one drop will be wasted. Each of us will promise to squish and squallop and scribble 1,000 children. Our meeting is over, announced the Grand High Witch. Here is the timetable for the remainder of your stay in the hotel. Right now, we must all go out on the Sunshine Terrace and have tea with that ridiculous manager. Next, at 6 o'clock tonight, so those witches who are too old to climb trees after Brundle 6 will be report to my room and receive 2 bottles each of mouse maker. My room is number 454. Do not forget it. Then at 8 o'clock, all of you will be able to assemble in the dining room for supper. We are lovely ladies of the RSPCC, and they are setting us 2 long tables especially for us. But do not forget to put the cotton plugs in your noses. That dining room will be filthy full of little children, and without the nose plugs, the stink will be unbearable. Apart from that, remember to behave normally at all times. Is everything clear? Any questions? I have one question, Your Grandness, said a voice in the audience. What happens if one of the chocolates we are giving away in our shops gets eaten by a grown-up? That's just too bad for the grown-up, the Grand High Witch said. This meeting is over, she shouted. Out you go. The witches stood up and began gathering their things together. I was watching them through the crack and hoping to heaven they would hurry up and leave so that I might be safe at last. Wait! Shrieked one of the witches in the black robe. Hold everything! Her shrieking voice echoed through the ballroom like a trumpet. All the witches suddenly stopped and turned and looked towards the speaker. She was one of the taller witches, and I could see her standing there with her head tilted back and her nose in the air, and she was sucking in great long breaths of air through those curly pink seashelly nostrils of hers. Wait, she just shouted again. What is it? The others cried out. Dog's droppings, she yelled. Just then I got a whiff of dog's droppings. Surely not, the others shouted. There couldn't be. Yes, shouted the first witch. There it is again. It's not strong, but it's there. I mean, it's here. It's definitely somewhere not too far away. What's going on down there? Shouted the Grand High Witch, glaring down from the platform. Mildred's just got a whiff of dog's droppings, your grandness. Someone's called back to her. What rubbish is this? Shouted the Grand High Witch. She has dog's droppings on the brain. There are no children in this room. Hang on, cried the witch, called Mildred. Hang on, everybody, don't move. I'm getting this again. Her huge curvy nose holes were waving in and out like a pair of fishtails. It's getting stronger. It's hitting me hard now. Can the rest of you smell it? All the noses of the witches in that room went up in the air, and all the nostrils began to suck and sniff. She's right, cried another. She's absolutely right. Dog's droppings it is, strong and foul. In a matter of seconds, the entire assembly of witches had taken up the dreaded cry of dog's droppings. Dog's droppings, they shouted. The room is full of poo, poo. Why did we not smell it before? It stinks like a sewer. Some little swine must be hiding not so very far away from here. Find it, screamed the Grand High Witch. Track it down, rottle it out, follow your noses till it gets it. The hairs on my head were standing up like the bristles of a nail brush, and a cold sweat was breaking out all over me. Rottle it out, this small lump of dung, screeched the Grand High Witch. Don't let it escape. If it is in here, it has observed the most secret things. It must be exterminated immediately. Next chapter, Metamorphosis. I remember thinking to myself there is no escape for me now. Even if I make a run for it and manage to dodge the lot of them, I still won't get out the doors. Are chained and locked. I'm finished. I'm done for. Oh, Grandmama, what are they going to do to me? I looked round and saw a hideous, painted and powdered witch's face staring down at me, and the face opened its mouth and yelled triumphantly, It's here! It's behind the screen! Come and get it! The witch reached out a gloved hand and grabbed me by the hair, but I twisted free and jumped away. I ran. Oh, how I ran! The sheer terror of it all put wings on my feet. I flew around the outside of the great ballroom, and not one of them had a chance of catching me as I came level with the doors. I paused and tried to open them, but the big chain was on one of them, and they didn't even rattle. The witches were not bothering to chase me. They simply stood there in small groups watching me, and knowing for certain that there was no way I could escape. Several of them were holding their noses with gloved fingers, and there were cries of, Pooh! What a stink! We can't stand this much longer. Catch it then, you idiot, screamed the Grand High Witch from on the platform. Spread it out in a line across the room, and close it in and grab on it. Corner his filthy little gobbles, seize it and bring it up here to me. The witches spread out as they were told. They advanced towards me, some one from one end, some from the other, and some came down the middle between the rows of the empty chairs. They were bound to get me now. They had me cornered. From sheer and absolute terror I began to scream. Help! I screamed, turning my head towards the doors, in the hope that somebody outside might hear me. Help! 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 Get it! Shouted the Grand High Witch. Grab hold of it! Stop yelling! They rushed at me, and then about 5 of them grabbed me by the arms and legs and lifted me off the ground. I went on screaming, but one of them clapped a gloved hand over my mouth, and that stopped me. Bring it here! Shouted the Grand High Witch. Bring the spying little verm up here to me. I was carried on the platform with my arms and legs held tight by many hands, and I lay there suspended in the air, facing the ceiling. I saw the Grand High Witch standing over me, grinning at me in the most horrible way. She held up a small blue bottle of mouse maker, and she said, Now for a little medicine. Hold his nose and make him open his mouth. The strong fingers pinched my nose. I kept my mouth closed tight and held my breath, but I couldn't do it for long. My chest was bursting. I opened my mouth to get one big quick breath of air, and as I did so, the Grand High Witch poured the entire contents of the little bottle down my throat. Oh, the pain and the fire! It felt as though a kettle full of boiling water had been poured into my mouth. My throat was going up in flames. Then very quickly the frightful burning, searing, scalding feeling started spreading down into my chest and into my tummy and on into my arms and legs and all over my body. I screamed and screamed, but once again the gloved hand was clapped over my lips. The next thing I felt was my skin beginning to tighten. How else can I describe it? It was quite literally a tightening and shrinking of the skin all over my body, from the top of my head to the tips of my fingers to the ends of my toes. I felt as though I was a balloon and somebody was twisting the top of the balloon and twisting, and the balloon was getting smaller and smaller, and the skin was getting tighter and tighter, and soon it was going to burst. Then squeezing began. This time I was inside a suit of iron, and somebody was turning a screw, and with each turn of the screw the iron suit became smaller and smaller, so that I was squeezed like an orange into a pulpy mess with the juice running out of my sides. After that, there came a fierce prickling sensation all over my skin, or what was left of my skin, and as though the tiny needles were forcing their way out through the surface of the skin inside. And this, I realised now, was the growing of the mouse bear. Far away in the distance, I heard the voice of a Grand High Witch yelling, 500 doses! This stinking little carbuncle has 500 doses, and the alarm clock has been smashed, and now we are having instantaneous action. I heard clapping and cheering, and I remember thinking, I'm not myself any longer. I've gone clear out of my own skin. I noticed that the floor was only an inch from my nose. I noticed also a pair of furry little front paws resting on the floor. I was able to move those paws. They were mine. At that moment, I realised that I was not a little boy any longer. I was a mouse. Now for the mouse trap, I heard the Grandpa Witch yelling. I've got it right here, and here's a piece of cheese. But I wasn't going to wait for that. I was off across the platform like a streak of lightning. I was astonished at my own speed. I leapt over Witch's feet, right and left, and in no time at all, I was down the steps and onto the floor of the ballroom itself, skittering off among the rows of chairs. What I especially liked was the fact that I made no sound at all as I ran. I was a swift and silent mover, and quite amazingly, the pain had all gone now. I was feeling remarkably well. It's not a bad thing after all, I thought to myself, to be tiny as well as speedy when there is a bunch of dangerous females after your blood. I selected the back leg of a chair and squeezed up against it and kept very still. In the distance, the Grand High Witch was shouting, Leave the little stinkpot alone. It is not worth bothering about. It is only a mouse now. Somebody else will soon catch it. Let us get out of here. The meeting is over. Unlock the doors and shove off to the Sunshine Terrace to have a nice tea with that idiotic manager. Okay, I think I'm going to read the next chapter. I know I said I was going to read two, but this one's a little bit short. So this one's called Bruno. Just have a quick drink, guys. I'm a bit sore throat today. Okay, next chapter, Bruno. I peeked round the leg of the chair and watched the hundreds of witches' feet walking out through the doors of the ballroom. When they had all gone and the place was absolutely silent, I began to move cautiously about on the floor. Suddenly I remembered Bruno. He must surely be about here somewhere. Too. Bruno, I called out. I wasn't seriously expecting that I would be able to speak at all now that I would become a mouse, so I got the shock of my life when I heard my own voice, my own perfectly normal, rather loud voice coming out of my tiny mouth. It was wonderful. I was thrilled. I tried it again. Bruno Jenkins, where are you? I called out. If you can hear me, give me a shout. My voice was exactly the same, and just as loud as it had been when I was a boy. Hey there, Bruno Jenkins, I called. Where are you? There was no answer. I pottered about between the seat legs, trying to get used to being so close to the ground. I decided I rather liked it. You're probably wondering why I wasn't depressed at all. I found myself thinking, what's so wonderful about being a little boy anyway? Why is that necessarily any better than being a mouse? I know that mice get hunted and they sometimes get poisoned or caught in traps, but little boys sometimes get killed too. Little boys can be run over by motor cars or they can die from awful illnesses. Little boys have to go to school. Mice don't. Mice don't have to pass exams. Mice don't have to worry about money. Mice, as far as I can see, have only two enemies, humans and cats. My grandmother is a human, but I know for certain she will always love me, whoever I am, and she never, thank goodness, keeps a cat. When mice grow up, they don't ever have to go to war and fight against other mice. Mice, I felt pretty certain, all like each other. People don't. Yes, I told myself, I don't think it's all at all a bad thing to be a mouse. I was wandering around in the ballroom floor thinking about all this when I spotted another mouse. It was crouching on the floor, holding a piece of bread in its front paws and nibbling away at it with great gusto. It had to be Bruno. Hello, Bruno, I said. He glanced up at me for about 2 seconds and went right on guzzling. What have you found? I asked him. One of them dropped it, he answered. It's a fish paste sandwich. Pretty good. He spoke with a perfectly normal voice. One would have expected that a mouse, if it was going to talk at all, would do so with the smallest, squeakiest voice you could imagine. It was terrifically funny to hear the voice of a rather loud-mouthed Bruno coming out of that tiny little mouse's throat. Listen, Bruno, I said, now that we're both mice, I think we ought to start thinking about the future. He stopped eating and stared at me with his small black eyes. What do you mean, we? He said. The fact that you're a mouse has nothing to do with me. But you're a mouse too, Bruno. Don't be a fool, he said. I'm not a mouse. I'm afraid you are, Bruno. I most certainly am not, he shouted. Why are you insulting me? I haven't been rude to you. Why do you call me a mouse? Don't you know what's happened to you? I said. What on earth are you talking about? Bruno said. I have to inform you, I said, that not very long ago the witches turned you into a mouse. Then they did it to me. You're lying, he cried. Not a mouse. If you hadn't been so busy guzzling that sandwich, I said, you would have noticed your hairy paws. Take a look at them. Bruno looked down at his paws. He jumped. Good grief, he cried. I am a mouse. You wait till my father hears about this. He may think it's an improvement, I said. I don't want to be a mouse, Bruno shouted, jumping up and down. I refuse to be a mouse. I'm Bruno Jenkins. There are worse things than being a mouse, I said. You can live in a hole. I don't want to live in a hole, Bruno shouted. And you can creep into the larder at night, I said, and nibble through all the packets of raisins and cornflakes and chocolate biscuits and everything else you can find. You can stay there all night eating yourself silly. That's what mice do. Now that's a thought, Bruno said, perking up a bit. But how am I going to open the door of the fridge to get the cold chicken and all the leftovers? That's something I do every evening at home. Maybe your rich father will get you a special little mouse fridge all to yourself, I said. One that you can open. You say a witch did this to me, Bruno said. Which witch? The one who gave you the chocolate bar in the hotel lobby yesterday, I told him. Don't you remember? The filthy old cow, he shouted. I'll get her for this. Where is she? Who is she? Forget it, I said. You don't have a hope. Your biggest problem at the moment is your parents. How are they going to take this? Will they treat you with sympathy and kindness? Bruno considered this for a moment. I think, he said, that my father is going to be a bit put out. And your mother? She's terrified of mice, Bruno says. Then you've got a problem, haven't you? Why only me? He said. What about you? My grandmother will understand perfectly, I said. She knows all about witches. Bruno took another bite of his sandwich. What do you suggest? He said. I suggest we both go. We both go first of all and consult my grandmother, I said. She'll know exactly what to do. I moved towards the doors, which were standing open. Bruno, still grasping part of the sandwich in one paw, followed after me. When we get out into the corridor, I said, we're going to run like mad. Sit close to the wall and all the way follow me. Do not talk, and do not let anyone see you. Don't forget that just about anyone who catches sight of you will try and kill you. I snatched a sandwich out of his paw and threw it away. Here goes, I said. Keep behind me. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for listening again. And until the next time. Bye.